All right, we are moving right along to a very different kind of book and author Jan Morrill. Hi, Jan. Welcome to the Author's Corner.
Hi, Elaine. How are you?
I'm doing great tonight. Well, this is such a fascinating book of yours. It's called The Red Kimono, and I want to start with I think The Doll in the Red Kimono, which is a compilation, and that, too, is part of the Amazon Prime program, but it is fascinating, and it's something you will not want pulled out of your Kindle. So, and let me give you Jan's, the spelling of Jan's last name. It's Morrill. Is that the correct pronunciation?
Yes, it is.
Morrill, Doll in the Red Kimono. And this starts off the entire story that will take the readers onto your historical fiction book, The Red Kimono. So tell everybody how you got started here with The Doll in the Red Kimono.
Well, I have been working on The Red Kimono for, I believe, about 7 years now. And as I was working on it, as I did research and found new things, I would post blog posts on what I had found and bits and pieces of my family's history that I used in the actual Red Kimono book. And after about a little over 2 years, I had quite a few blog posts on the writing of the Red Kimono. So I compiled all of those blog posts into an ebook.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So this ebook takes place basically from about February of 2010 to September of 2012, and I'm not sure how many essays it is, but it's about 180 pages of essays that I wrote during the research phase of the Red Kimono.
Well, you've got great reviews on this alone. History, Doll in the Red Kimono, it's a book everyone should read. History teaches us the most valuable lessons, and we should learn from it. Unfortunately, we don't. But,
right.
Yeah, you've got Morrill writes elegantly of a time in American history many would like to forget. She shares a unique perspective on the experience of the Japanese interned during the Second World War. Excellent insights, loved it, couldn't put it down, just fabulous reviews here. Tell us a little bit about your background and why this time of history spoke so strongly to you.
My mother is a Japanese American, and she was an internee. I believe she was 7 years old when she became an internee. And although she didn't talk very much about it, the few times that she did talk to me about it, I could see the emotion. Usually she would get tears in her eyes, and she just couldn't really talk about it very much. Same with my uncles and aunts. It's just not something the Japanese community talked about very much. So, of course, as a child, that made me a lot more curious. Mm-hmm. And she took us to see the internment camp that she was in when I was probably about 10 years old. And, again, it was barren. There was really nothing there. It was just the site of the camp. And I just remember watching her cry as she looked at it. And I think the thing that struck me the most was when she told me that even though I'm half Japanese and at that time in my life had not been to Japan or didn't speak Japanese, she told me that if I had been alive when that happened, I would have been in an internment camp. And I think that really struck me, realizing, I'm as American as anybody else is. Mm-hmm. And so that's always kind of stayed with me. And then her father was actually killed by 2 black teenagers, and so all of those kind of became seeds of the story of the Red Kimono, even though it's a completely fictionalized story.
Well, let's shift gears and go. The book title is The Red Kimono, and that is on Amazon. Now, this is from the publisher, which is the University of Arkansas Press.
Yes.
And you've gotten some fantastic reviews here, too, from page 1. I was drawn into the story. I like this one. I'm not sure why, but it does remind me of Japanese style, which is very elegant, and someone reviewed it. I found the novel to be elegant in style. And, of course, you've got the fabulous red kimono on the cover.
Isn't that a beautiful cover?
Oh, yes. It's just stunning. So how did you tell us about this story? It is fictional, but it's what I love to call faction because it's so based in fact. So tell everybody what it was like in wonderful America in 1941 if you happen to be part Japanese or even all Japanese.
Yes, and I did try to make the book as accurate as possible historically. I did a lot of research. The story itself is fictitious and the characters are fictitious, but all of the historical facts are accurate. And basically, to be Japanese at the time that Pearl Harbor was attacked, you were required to register as Japanese. I believe it was February 19th, 1942, Executive Order 9066 was posted everywhere telling the Japanese that they had to report to be sent to assembly centers. And those assembly centers were sometimes horse tracks. So their temporary housing, which could have been up to 6 months, was a horse stall that they had
Oh, my God. I had no idea.
Yes. Most people don't, and that's one reason I really like talking about the book, because I know when I read about this time in our history, it may have been a page or two, but not very much more than that. And, of course, as kids, I think a lot of times we don't pay too much attention to history anyway. But a lot of people don't know the details. And my mother stayed in a horse stall until they were sent to their more permanent internment camp, which for my mother was Tule Lake, California. And they were kept behind barbed wire with guard towers, and they were there until the end of the war. There were 2 camps in Arkansas, which the camp that is in the book is Roar, and it was in southeast Arkansas. And the 2 camps in Arkansas at the height of the war held 16,000 internees, and
wow.
It was the 3rd and 4th largest city in Arkansas at the time.
So essentially, an internment camp was a more homogenized word for prison, yes?
Yes.
Concentration camp, my husband said, yeah.
It's sometimes referred to as concentration camp. I referred to it as an internment camp because I was not in the camp, obviously.
Yeah.
So, but I kind of see a distinction between the concentration camps and the internment camps. They were prisons, but because initially, anyway, the Japanese Americans didn't have the freedom to leave. I'd say from my research, what it sounded like is maybe a year to 2 years after they were in the camp, they were allowed to leave with permits to work.
Mm-hmm.
So they were allowed to leave, but again, they had to sign in and out of the camp.
Well, what did people do every day? Just stare at each other? I mean,
No.
What did they do?
They did have schools. In fact, I have one of my uncle's yearbooks from one of the camps, and when you look through the pictures, it looks like a typical school. They had baseball teams. They had mercantile stores. They had their own kind of forms of government within. They had block leaders. Each of the barracks were in blocks, and they had block managers and block leaders, and they had a newspaper. So they had their own little communities. They had beautiful gardens. that
wow.
they planted within the camps. I've seen several pictures where even though these were black tar-papered barracks, they had beautiful flowers planted around it, so they made the best of it that they could. Oh, and absolutely beautiful art came out of it, too. The Butler Center in Arkansas has a lot of the artwork that came out of the camps.
Now, were they, and you can see how ignorant I am, and probably many people are, of this time, were they allowed to, I'm not even sure what the word would be to use, have their religion and do traditional meals, or were they not allowed to be Japanese? Does that make any sense?
Yes, I understand what you're saying. And again, I don't know a lot of the details of the day-to-day life, but I've seen many pictures. In fact, there's a beautiful book out now. I can't remember the name of it, but it's some of the only known color photographs of, in fact, I've got it here. It's called Colors of Confinement, and they're beautiful color photographs. And on the cover of the book is women getting ready to participate in obon, which is the Japanese dance, and they've got beautiful colored kimonos on. And so I believe they were allowed to participate in their Japanese culture. There were Buddhists in the camp, so they were able to participate. They had a freedom of religion. Again, from the pictures I've seen, it looks like they were able to have their Japanese culture.
Wow. So basically, we were just scared to death of anyone Japanese who might be a spy and give help to the enemy since 1941. Right. And then to keep them all, together so we could watch them and feel so much safer, internment camps were created. Right. And
it was a perfect example of what fear will do to us. And we saw a little bit of it really when with the 9/11 attacks. We kind of saw the same thing happen with the Muslim community. A lot of people were afraid and still are today. And that's another reason I thought this book was important, especially because not very many people know the details of that time in our history. Because I see fear as a slippery slope. You don't really realize what fear is doing to you, and you take one step and get away with it, and then you take another step, and pretty soon people are in internment camps. And I just think we have to be cautious of where our fear can lead us. And it's in much smaller ways, too. I mean, I often talk about how even our fear of our differences politically keeps us from talking to each other, and I don't think that's good either.
No, I think the cliched line is don't talk about sex or religion or politics, and you'll be safe, which is really pretty sad because everybody's talking about all those things these days.
Yeah, and a lot of times with anger because they don't sit there, they don't really listen to each other, and I just feel like there's a lot lost when people can't talk about their differences.
I totally agree with you because that's how, we're supposed to be humans. I'm not exactly sure what the word human means anymore. Certainly there's still man's inhumanity to man hasn't come a long way. And between religion and politics, and some days you just sit and look at what's on the news or what is on Facebook or what's coming over the Internet and just shake your head and say, my God, what is everyone's problem?
I agree. I was listening to your interview with David just a little bit ago about bullying over social media. And sadly, the social media, although it gives us all the opportunity to talk to more people, it also makes it much easier to bully anonymously.
Oh, God, yes. And viciously.
Right.
and without fear that anyone is going to do anything to you, because you don't know where it's coming from. It could, for all you know, it could be from the Mars rover sending a nasty tweet. I mean, nobody really knows anymore. Yeah,
exactly. It hurts just as much.
Oh, yeah, it really does. And, my husband will say to me, oh, for God's sakes, you've been a published author since 1979. Can't you take it? And I would say, no, I can't, because every book you write is like your child. And what would you do if somebody insulted our daughter or our son? Well, then, whoa.
I know.
It's like, it's just, and it's the same thing. And I'm not sure people understand that. And here in this vibrant writing, you really have done a fantastic job. Thank
you.
It's so realistic. You've got great reviews here from the New York Times bestselling author and Jody Thomas, who actually I know Jody Thomas, New York Times bestselling author too.
Yes.
A wonderful slice of history. And we were talking about this last week, where a lot of times you can take fiction and make the realness of your fiction be so much more powerful than if you wrote the story as a nonfiction or as a true historical book.
I agree. And that's why I love historical fiction, because it's just, to me, it's a more interesting way of learning about a time in history than just sitting down and reading a history book. Now, I know a lot of people like to just read the history book, but I've always been one that has needed a little bit more of the prose, the poetry of a story, than rather just reading facts.
Well,
so that's what I try to do.
Do you know of anyone who was in any of the internment camps who have actually written their story of a day-to-day life?
Yes, and I should have written these down. There are a couple of, several that I read. One is called, I believe, Nisei Daughter, and let's see.
I know I threw this at you. I'm sorry, but all of a sudden just popped in my head. I mean, did they all fare? The three, you have the Japanese girls in your story, and did you take the next step with their lives after? I mean, with your mom, for instance. So she was in the internment camp from, did you say age 7?
Yes, that would have been about age 7 to 11.
Okay, and then what happened to your mom and your grandparents? So they were let out of the internment camp. How did they go back to their original life? But was that life still there?
No, the life was not still there. They lost their home. They basically had to start completely from scratch. My grandfather and grandmother were immigrants. They came from Japan. And let's see, I believe my grandfather came in 1914. No, he came in 1917. And so he had been working from 1917 to 1942 when he went to the internment camp and lost everything. So had to start over when he came out.
So they did not get any reparations or anything like that from the government?
They did get reparations. It was under Reagan, I believe, that they got reparations. I believe any Japanese American who had been in an internment camp got $20,000 from the government with a letter of apology. There was,
nothing like those letters of apology. Oops,
right.
Oops, we made a slight mistake in 1941, and I hope you won't hold it against us. And sorry you lost your home, your life, your job, your work, you were an American citizen, but we were just so afraid.
Well, they had one of those commissions. I guess they had these kinds of commissions back then too, and they had a commission that did a big study on it, and the result of the study was that it was a result of basically fear and racism that the Japanese Americans were put in the camps. So before we go on, I did find a book that was one of the best books I did on research that has it's just thick with essays from people who were in internment camps, and it's called Only What We Could Carry, the Japanese American Internment Experience, and it's full of essays from people who were actually in the camps.
Wow, amazing. Well, now this isn't your only writing, Jan. I'm reading the most fabulous author profile on you, and I know the Chicken Soup people, so you've had short stories and memoir essays in Chicken Soup for the Soul books, correct?
Yes. I've had 3 stories in Chicken Soup, and then I've had several short stories in different anthologies. I'm also working on another, I'm working on the sequel to The Red Kimono, but I'm also working on another young adult story called Mo's Shadow. And my goal is to finish the sequel first, and then I'll go back to Mo's Shadow again.
So now what is the sequel going to be about, The Red Kimono?
The sequel opens with the Little Rock 9, Sachi and Juby. It's in 1957. Sachi and Juby are standing outside watching the Little Rock 9 try to enter Little Rock Central High School. And so it takes the same characters through 1957 to 1963. So it's more of a civil rights-oriented book.
Wow.
Yeah.
Always so topical. Some days I read the date on the calendar and then watch the news and think somebody's in a time warp.
Yeah.
Yeah, really. And
well,
you
history definitely repeats itself.
Oh, it does. And don't you just want to slap it? Because
I know.
Really, we've been there, we've done it before. I mean, whether it's I get very upset about all this women's rights, women's health issues. It's like, gentlemen and some women as well, I can think. I'm old enough to make my own choices. I can do it.
Right.
And
exactly.
Look at the calendar, grow up a little. But
I know.
I know. Some days I can see why people run away to islands with no phone, no power, no nothing.
No news. I know.
I know, really. Now, you were recently nominated for the Pushcart Prize for your short story X's and O's, which appeared in the Voices anthology. Now, tell me a little bit about that. That is something I'm not well-versed in short stories. So tell me about X's and O and the Pushcart Prize.
The Pushcart Prize is a prize for short stories only, and I was nominated. I didn't win the prize, but X's and O's was a story that I pulled out of The Red Kimono about when Sachi and Juby first meet, and it's in the book. It's written from Sachi's point of view, but the short story was written in Juby's point of view, and that's something I really like to play with, is to write stories from points of view of different characters, because of course everyone sees things differently. So the X's and O's represents Sachi and Juby playing tic-tac-toe in the sand, and it's kind of a metaphor for how different they are, because Sachi is Japanese and Juby is black, and it's about the beginning of a lifelong friendship.
Oh, wow, very powerful.
Yeah. It's my favorite part of the book is the friendship between Sachi and Juby, because Sachi is Japanese and her mother is trying to get her to retain her Japanese culture, and she's kind of reserved, and Juby is sassy and adventurous and mischievous, and the two meet while Sachi is at the internment camp in Arkansas, and they become lifelong friends because they get beyond their differences.
Wouldn't it be lovely if the world did that?
Yes, and that's why I wanted one of my point of view characters to be a child, because they don't have all those things that make them fearful of differences.
Well, this brings up an interesting thing because I was talking with David about new adult fiction and YA fiction. Would you say the Red Kimono is a read for young adults from, say, 16 on?
I think it is. When I first started writing it, I didn't intend it to be. I just intended that it was going to be a mainstream historical fiction. But the main characters are, at the beginning of the book, are 9 and then 2 17-year-olds. And although a lot of the themes are adult themes, I think a lot of the lessons are good things for young adults to read also.
Great. Okay. Now, I wanted to ask you, how long have you been writing? How do you fit all this in with your life, with your real life?
I've been writing all my life. Currently, with my real life, the best time for me to write is I usually get up around 5 o'clock in the morning, and I like to write.
You're one of those dreaded morning people, aren't you?
I really am. That's the best time for me to write because nobody else's day gets started by then. So I can usually get in a couple of good hours at that time of day.
Wow.
Before my mind starts filling up with all the other things I need to do.
Oh, I know. It's hectic being a writer. And how much well, you had to do really a lot of research on this and then turn it into, mass market entertainment.
Yes, and I always heard as I was writing the book that writing the book is the easy part. It's marketing it afterwards that's the real challenge. And that's true.
Now, does the university press help you out at all with the marketing?
Oh, they do. They've been absolutely wonderful to work with, and we worked very well together. The marketing director, Melissa, and I, we communicate regularly, and she does some marketing, and then I do some marketing, and so far we haven't double marketed anybody. So we communicate pretty well.
Double, I like that.
But it's a big job though. It takes usually several hours a day. There are so many different ways to market. It's just a matter of picking out the best ways.
It is. It's very difficult. And as a person who was in Facebook jail for 3 days, it's yes. Actually, I was invited to write a story about that, which will appear in a magazine. I hope that doesn't send me to Facebook prison, but we'll see when that comes out. But it is very difficult because, you have to get the books out, the information on the books out to readers. And we all are just one of millions of books out there. And it's very difficult. So where can people, are you on Facebook, Twitter, a website, and are you blogging?
I'm doing all of those, and that does take some time. But, yes, I'm on Facebook. I have an author page. It's Jan Morrill Author. My website is www.janmorrill.com, and you can access 2 of my blogs through my website. I'm on Twitter as Jan Morrill, and I'm on Pinterest. So really just about anywhere you can be online, I think I'm there.
Mm-hmm. Well, I bet your Pinterest, I'm going to have to investigate your Pinterest site. Do you have a lot of the Japanese influence? I mean, what are you pinning there? I was wondering, Yeah,
I have a board on haiku because I also write haiku. I've got the Japanese culture board. I've got the Red Kimono era. And then a lot of just the fun things, too, I've got. But you can access all of my social media at janmorrill.com on my About page. I've got all my buttons there.
Oh, great. And now you said your next project is the sequel to the Red Kimono.
Uh-huh. Yes.
And when do you project that one to be ready?
I think that will be at least a year. I'm still in the process of writing it. I've probably got it about halfway finished, and then, of course, comes all of the editing. And at this point, the university has said that they'd be interested in reading it, but they won't really know if they'll accept it until they actually read the full manuscript. So it may even involve having to look for an agent or publisher too. So it'll be at least a year, I'm sure, before that comes out.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Thank you, Elaine. I enjoyed it.
Fascinating. Send people to Amazon.com, The Red Kimono, and the doll in the red kimono for a taste of America. Sure.
Yes, and the doll in the red kimono will be free tomorrow and Saturday.
Okay. Well, we need, I guess the show's not, it'll be free for Saturday. That's great because this will be a podcast. So let me write that down. So Doll in the Red Kimono will be free on Saturday. Super. We will make sure that gets posted all over. Thank you so much for joining me tonight,
Thank you, Elaine. Thanks a lot. All right. Bye.